Morning. I was watching a video this morning called Loving a Sex Robot, Insanity or Reality. It was a Russian TV news item, I guess, that kind of thing. And it was, it was treated quite jovially, and it had some footage of one or two men who had sex toy robots, either sex toys or robots that could fulfill sexual functions. And the whole tone of the item was kind of light, it's a bit pathetic, it's kind of funny. And it was really, and I had two initial reactions to it. My first reaction was, as the people on the news programme were kind of pointing me towards, was a reaction of, oh, this is really sad, look at this sad guy, who can't get a girlfriend, he has to have a sex toy, albeit a really large sex toy, an expensive sex toy. So that was my first reaction, these are sad characters. And my second reaction was kind of, look how pathetic these toys are in the first place. They're so stereotypical because they're really skinny women, large breasts, very particular kind of skin, particular kind of look. I thought they're not even imaginative sex toys, they're not even imaginative in the sense that they're presenting what real women look like. They look like dolls. And there was a particular phrase in it where they were talking about Japanese research into robotics, and in particular, as I say, these kind of sex robots. And the phrase was becoming more lifelike. And I thought, well, not really. I mean, they kind of move in a way which is kind of lifelike, sort of. But they look like anime characters. But they're not really lifelike at all. They look like photoshopped images of women from magazines, or like mannequins in shop windows, ridiculously narrow waists. And I thought, that's quite interesting. Because as I say, at first I thought that's a lack of imagination, but then I started thinking about something else. I thought, is there a kind of positive way of looking at this? And is there a way of looking at it in a way which parallels certain kind of developments in male sexuality, male identity? Because one of the issues with female identity, particularly the representation of female identity, is because it is typified by these kind of photoshopped images that I mentioned. There's a sense in which women are unwillingly objectified. I mean, we all like to be objectified occasionally, but there's a sense in which women are unwillingly objectified, and also objectified in fairly ridiculous and unattainable ways. This narrow-waisted, full-lipped, large-breasted, perfectly complexioned, doll. Really, that's the image. And that's absolutely part of some of the problems attached to female gender identity and the stereotyping of that and the objectification that goes around it. So I thought, well, is this, just in relation to that, is what these men are doing with these dolls, is there a way of looking at that as a kind of outsourcing of that objectification? So rather than objectifying real women, these men, or the industries that are supporting those desires, these men are producing objects of desire. So the women can carry on being women. Women can express themselves in any kind of identity formation they wish. But all the sexual objectification has been outsourced onto a piece of technology that men can satisfy those particular desires with, which means we can interact with you, women, in a kind of different kind of way, other than this sexual way. Now that must be a bit weird, I would imagine. So that got me on to thinking, well, is there a way of looking at that which isn't just about taking away what little power, what little sexual capital women have and giving it to a machine? Is there a way of looking at it differently to that? And that's why I'm kind of placing this in a kind of historical parallel to a certain kind of de-skilling that happens within male identity politics. Because male identity politics, up until really recently, has been characterised by men as kind of strong breadwinners, hunters, those kind of figures, warriors. But most of us don't do that anymore. Most of that has been outsourced onto technology, but it's been outsourced quite a long time ago. During the Industrial Revolution, most of that was done. And then the history of the 20th century, in terms of technological development, has been about outsourcing traditional male activities, like fighting, which has been outsourced onto firearms, or like heavy lifting, which has been outsourced onto cranes, or moving things quickly, outsourced onto vehicles. So a lot of the typical male role has been outsourced onto technology already. Stereotypical male role I'm talking about. which means that men have had to kind of reinvent our identities, some of us, or suffer that kind of anomy that comes from thinking, well, what's a man now then if we're not those things? You know, you have to kind of go through that kind of crisis in male identity. Maybe that's the kind of thing which could happen to female identity if that stereotypical, of course limited, but stereotypical female role of kind of sexual object was outsourced in the same way that strength and violence has been outsourced. Outsourcing of sexuality onto objects, so that, as I say, women would find a different kind of identity, divorced from that, and men would leave them alone because we'd have our sex objects to play with and to carry around. Anyway, I don't know. They look quite expensive actually. Very interesting objects though. Anyway, tell me what you think. Would you feel bereft if you're a woman? Would you feel bereft if your partner or men in general just stopped looking at you as a sex object and instead bought sex objects instead? And if you're a guy, would you be interested in buying a sex object? A beautiful, loving sex object?